This sums it up pretty well. Why do you? Why do you? Why do you do these things? It's to do with what's going on in your head. It's not to do with what's going on out there in the market. Yeah? It's to do with what's going on in your head. The sale is made in your head and in your heart. When you start to try and sell something, one of the first things you've got to realise is, what is going on in the arena that I'm engaged in. Yeah? Where is the market? The market is like an animal. It moves constantly. It keeps on changing. So here are the stages of any market, and until you recognise what stage you're in, you cannot possibly begin to create an argument. Because in order to talk to people, again, you've got to understand where they are mentally, yeah, about the stuff that you're flogging. If you're the first person who comes up with a personal computer, and all you have to do is to explain, I've got this marvellous thing. You don't need a typewriter anymore. You don't need a word processor anymore. You can communicate. You can do all the other, with this wonderful new thing called a computer, which now, for the first time ever, is small. Yeah, can be on your desk. You can have all your customers on a file on your desk. You can do all these things. All you have to do is to explain this is what it is. With that peculiar stupidity to which large corporations are prone. Xerox actually invented the personal computer and screwed it up. In fact, a friend of mine at McKinsey wrote a book called Fumbling the Future. They had it. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't explain to people what it was. It's quite extraordinary. I was reading this morning on my PC a communication on the subject of cloud. I'm sure you've seen lots of stuff about cloud. You've got grinning idiots with big posters saying, I'm a cloud wanker, or, I love the cloud. And, and I was thinking, but nobody's ever explained in simple bloody English what the sodding cloud is. Yeah? It's incredible. And then I found somebody who actually explained this is what it is. This is what, and I thought, why didn't they just say that? This is what it is. This is a thing where you can get everything, it can all be on the internet and you don't have to have it on your computer. Nobody said it. It's unbelievable. So I have a great friend of mine who died last year in India. He was one of the fathers of Indian advertising, a man called Mani Iyer. And when I first went to India to set up Ogilvy and May, the director there, David Ogilvy said to me, make sure you meet and spend some time with Mani Iyer, because he is one of the most brilliant people in our entire business. And so Mani Iyer, as chance fell out, we became great friends, had one or two drinks together from time to time, quite a few. And I was doing a seminar in Goa, and he was on before me. And I waited to see what he was going to say. And he stood up and he said, gentlemen, ladies, the first thing I would like to tell you is the obvious is always overlooked. The obvious thing is that this is what it is, we'll explain to you what it is and what it does, And people say, no, we're going to do something creative. That's where we're paying X, Y, Z agencies to come up with this amazingly expensive series of commercials which will leave people utterly mystified and lost in a cloud, yeah? In this particular case. So that's all you have to do. This is what it is, and this is why it's better than what you had before. Next. Then you've got to explain, other people, now somebody else has got a PC, yeah? So you've got to explain why my PC is better than your PC, yeah? And the most astounding thing about the computer industry is that to this day, the majority of computer firms do not tell you why their computer is better than someone else's computer. You go and read any of the many dull, dreary, stupid communications you get from Dell and see if they explain to you why you should buy a Dell rather than Hewlett-Packard. That is one of the two main reasons why Dell is losing market share, but I won't go into that. Yeah? So you've got to, this is what it is, this is what it does for you, and this is why it's better than the other guy's stuff. And then you get into the third stage of the market. Mostly you talk about this is why we're better than the competition, because everyone knows what a PC is. Yeah? So, but most computer firms are still wandering around aimlessly in stage 1 when they've already reached stage 3. They're in the wrong part of town. Yeah? And make sure you're in the right part of town. You've got to know your enemy. Who is your enemy? Well, many people compare marketing to war, so your enemy is your competitor. Yeah? So supposing you were selling training, which I suppose I do amongst other things, I have to ask myself, who competes? Yeah? Who is my enemy? Who do I have to take customers from? Another event or course? Webinars, you see it all on, you know. Don't have to turn up. Another way to learn or meet people. You know, go to a conference, read a book, whatever. In-house training, why come with a lot of other people? Yeah? You can have in-house training. There's some people here from Hargreaves Lansdowne. On the day of the London bombings, my partner and I were going to do a seminar for Hargreaves Lansdowne. That's in-house training. Yeah? Or all of the above, and the answer is all of the above. You're competing against, actually, it goes beyond that. They've got 300 quid, they can spend it on anything they like, yeah? I think I'll have it as a deposit on a new car, yeah? Nothing to do with training at all. So it's quite difficult to determine who you're fighting and who you've got to worry about and who you don't have to worry about. But every time you ignore any one of those possibilities, you're losing money. Yeah? Every time you do that. That's why research and reflection is very, very important. You have to think, who am I competing with? What are all the other things that people could spend their money on? Yeah? But your worst enemy is none of those people. Don't worry about them. This is your worst enemy. Complete bloody apathy. Most people will not do anything. Yeah? Most people today, you send out an email, and if 0.1% of the people actually do something, hey, you've done well. So your deadliest enemy is about 999%, of the people out there. They'll do nothing. Yeah? So you've got to think of all these things, all these people, all these possibilities that you're up against. There are 3 possibilities which in a way relate to what I was talking about just now. I mentioned Dell. Dell built a market because they delivered better. That's it. Yeah? You could have pretty much the computer you wanted and you could have it quickly. Yeah? They would have been even happier if they had something that nobody else had got, a product that was actually better. Yeah? Great. But the real creative challenge comes when you don't have a better product. You don't deliver better. You're selling the same shit as everyone else. You know? That's the challenge. Yeah. What do you do then? That is the great challenge. You have to say something different. Yeah? Ogilvy said so many interesting things, or I had so many amusing exchanges with him. I particularly remember one, and I quoted him in an article, and I said, as David Ogilvy said, the first person to tell the truth preempts the truth, and the truth always sells. And he sent me he used to scribble things, send them to me on the fax, and he said, I never said that. So I rang him up and I said, well, if you didn't say it, then I said it. And if I said it, then I'm very, very pleased with myself. I must be extremely clever. But it is true that, if you're the only person who's saying something that everyone else could say but doesn't say, yeah, it's to all intents and purposes, to the people who are reading or watching or listening, then what you say is that's the only thing that exists, because they didn't hear of anything else. Yeah? That's one of the reasons why when you're looking at what you're selling, you've got to say to yourself, how many things are there that people should know about, that I do, that everyone else does, but nobody talks about? Yeah? And people fail to do that for two reasons. Reason number one, they think they're very familiar. You know, you're very familiar with what you sell. And you start to get to the frame of mind where you think everyone else is very familiar with what you sell. Yeah? And you're bored with it. You're bored with it. You see it time and time and time and time and time again. So you ignore it. It's very interesting. I've got a client, I think, again, there's some people here from there at the moment, and I did some work for them a while ago, which actually, the stuff I did wasn't quite as good as the stuff that they did themselves, I think. But what's happened in that organisation is that people forgot what it was all about, they got bored with it, and they started going through the motions, you know? Very dangerous. So, I'm sorry about the strange nature of some of my slides. It took me years to master the typewriter after I threw away my fountain pen. But I think you can read it. This is about finding out about how you can actually compete with somebody. So Liverpool Victoria came to us and they said, do you think you can do something for us? Yeah? Very, very boring. Insurance, yeah? Your renewal. How can we get you people to renew? Yeah? Or to switch to us? And so we did some research and we discovered that the deal they offered was not all that good. And this is an absolutely classic example of where people go wrong in large organisations. So we went to a meeting in, not Eastbourne, Bournemouth. Yeah? And so my partner, who is the most diligent researcher I've ever met, we put together a proposal, said this is what we think we ought to do. And in came the marketing guy, you know. Oh, terribly sorry, I'm late. Sat down. Said, oh, so he said, I've been in a meeting. So I said, oh, really? I said, and what are you going to do next? He said, we've got another meeting. Another meeting. Yeah. So I said, oh. So we said, well, here's what we think you ought to do. We think, you know, the offering that you've got is not actually all that good. He said, really? How do you know that? And my partner said, because we went on the internet and we've compared all the rates and you're about number 5. Yeah. Ooh. Too busy in meetings to find out where he was in relationship to his competitors, yeah? And then we said, but your service is terrific. He said, really? He said, yeah. How do you know? Well, we went on the internet and we asked for quotes and you were much quicker at helping people than anyone else. Ooh. And, you know, and then we could, you know, we can justify this with these statements, one of which was this person said, you know, you really bent over backwards to help us. And he said, did you invent that? Or, no, we got it from your service people. Oh. And so the guy didn't know what was going on in his own business because he was too busy going from one bloody stupid meeting to another. Yeah? I know there are some people from Hargreaves Lansdown here, so I'll tell one of my favourite stories about Peter Hargreaves, who I think is the only billionaire in Bristol. And he told me about, he'd been looking at the day of the chief executive of British Airways, because I was saying to him, you know, I don't like meetings and I'd rather gather you don't, Peter. And he said, no. He said, I was looking at the diary of the chief executive of BA. He said he got up in the morning, had a breakfast meeting, and then he had a meeting in the morning, and then he had a meeting at lunchtime, then had a meeting in the afternoon, and then he, late afternoon, another meeting, then he went to dinner and had a meeting. And Peter said, I think he'd have been better off going down to Heathrow to find out what's going on. And this happens all the time, you know. You've got to find out what's going on with your customers, not what's going on in your bloody organisation. Yeah? It's a waste of time. So I sat and I thought about what my partner had found out, because she's much more diligent than I am. And I said, I said, everybody in this market is fighting on price. But So what people tend to think is that they'll look at the facts and they'll say, what people are most concerned about in this market is price, yeah? And from that they leap very quickly to the conclusion, therefore we must talk about price because that's what most people are interested in. But the difference between direct marketing and ordinary marketing, really, and the different kind of marketing I would suggest you should follow, is that I don't want to sell to 100% of the people. If I got 10% of them, I'd be very happy, yeah? So I wrote that. If you think some things are more precious than money, give us the chance to bend over backwards to help, yeah? And if you renew your home insurance this month, pay as little as $139.9 for building and $124 for contents, and so on, yeah? So it all starts by saying, what's the truth about this company? What do they really do? They don't have to be the best at everything. They don't even have to be best at the thing that most people are concerned with. They just have to be best at something that a sufficient number of people will be interested in to make money for you. And that did 42% better than what they were doing previously. Quite a long copy. I'm very clever here. P.S. If your motor insurance is due for renewal too, you could save even more. Just ask for a quote when you call us. We'll bend over backwards to give you a good deal. Yeah? So you really start with where people are. And you don't, it's not creative. As your renewal date comes up this month, you've probably been shopping around. You can spend weeks looking for the cheapest quote, but is that what really matters to you? Perhaps the story of Mr. Rowe will strike a chord with you. Money mattered to him too, but when it came to the crunch, it was our service that impressed him. Last February he had to make a claim. He called us and we did what we normally do. We helped him as much as we could. Mr. Rowe was so impressed he called us and said, your service was brilliant, and everyone I spoke to bent over backwards to help me in this situation. And he said he was even happier when I found out the policy was only £2 more expensive the year after. So I think, a lot of people know that what these bloody people do is they jack up the rates, yeah? They get you and then they jack up the rates. That's what they all do. So it's only £2. So you have to cover off all these eventualities. Are there people out there who are pissed off that somebody jacked up the rates on them, yeah? So you've got to be inside the mind of the people that you're selling to. But you see, all I'm doing there, not trying to be creative, I'm just trying to say this is the truth about the product and relate it to a true story, because nothing will beat the truth. Yeah? This is the most important question in marketing. Yeah? To whom are you offering what ultimate advantage? Yeah? All marketing is where I've got this thing that I'm trying to sell. Yeah? And the other thing I've got is these people I'd like to sell it to. And all I'm trying to do is bring the two together. Yeah? So this thing, what is the ultimate advantage of this thing? What will it do for you? Yeah? Not the immediate advantage, I'll explain what I mean in a minute, but the ultimate advantage, and who are these people? And if you're going to divide your time up, you should probably spend about 3 times as much time thinking about the people as you should thinking about the thing. And the reason for that is very simple and was put very, very well by Peter Drucker, the late Peter Drucker, who said, there is only one profit centre in business. It is your customer. And this afternoon, I'm going to put you through this excruciating torture where you have to really try and think about where your money comes from, about your customers, and see if something can be created that will work with those customers. Because that's really what you want to do, I assume. I assume you want to get stuff that will work better, so we'll see what we can do. So this Irving Wunderman, like all great men, a copywriter. Not really. No, he was a copywriter, the brother of Lester Wunderman. And Lester Wunderman is the man who coined the phrase direct marketing back in the late 50s. So this is something I did for the Royal Mint. You can't see it very well. I'll read it out to you a bit. This was for the Royal Mint, and it was aimed to sell this $1,000 Hong Kong gold coin. And I think the collectibles market is extremely difficult because there are many different motivations. There's the motivation of I want to own something, or I want to own something unique, and I want to have something that nobody else has got. There is just the motivation of people like to collect things. It's a human, thing that human beings do. So this starts with a heading over the salutation. It says advanced private offering. Advanced private offering. People like to have something before other people. Yeah? If I tell you you can have something before other people, unless you're a very strange person, you're interested. Yeah. So if you're selling something, yeah? The first people you talk to are your customers or your prospects. And you tell them they can have it before anyone else. If you do nothing else and the rest is rubbish, that will do well for you. Yeah? Am I going too far forward, Ben? I'm all right. Ben's... Poor old Ben. There are lots of people I put through misery one way or another. I'm surprised I haven't been killed. At the back, by the way, is Joe, who takes photographs. He's the only person I know who can make me look good, well, moderately good. And she does something that is unique. Apart from taking very good photographs, what she does is she will take somebody. Have you ever wanted to have a record of your life, of the way you lived, that you might want to pass on to your children or your grandchildren? We'll spend a day with you and record the way you do the things you do. Fantastic thing. Anyhow, all she does with me is she takes pictures of me making a fool of myself in front of large numbers of people. That's another subject. Okay. So, dear Coin Club subscriber. Now, again, the most important thing is who am I talking to? Yeah? Talk first to the people who are most likely to work for you. So, you talk to your existing customers, dear subscriber, and it says, on the 21st of October, 19 blah blah blah, the Royal Mint will issue a special Hong Kong $1,000 gold coin to celebrate the visit of Her Majesty the Queen and Prince Philip to Hong Kong. Then what it goes on to say is, look, I'm writing to you because you've bought these coins before. Yeah? So the best customer you're ever going to have is somebody who's bought the same stuff before. Yeah? And if they're collectors and they've bought the same stuff before, they are going to feel very unhappy if they don't have the whole lot. Yeah? So the ultimate advantage is this: first of all, you're going to hear about it before anyone else. You will have something other people don't have. That is what collecting is all about. Yeah? You will have something that other people don't have. So it's diving into the psyche of people and thinking, why do people do these little things? Yeah? I was a consultant to the Franklin Mint in 1975. And the idea of the collectible business as it is now was invented by one man, Ed Siegel, very clever man, because he then went away and started QVC. So he made two lots of billions. Yeah? And all he was watching people at a seaside resort and they're buying stuff, and he thought, people like to collect things. And I remember when I was interviewed for the job, well, I was a consultant, I was interviewed, and I didn't know what they did. And the guy, also called Ed, also called Siegel, said, he said, actually it was Joe Siegel who founded it, and Ed Siegel, who I worked with in London. And I said, what do you do? And he said, well, we're the Franklin Mint. I said, you sell this shit for people who don't know what to collect, like, beautifully embossed Japanese toilet bowls in China, in miniature. And he said, that's the one. So he made a billion out of the desire people have to collect stuff, yeah? So again, you've got to try and dive into what is it that motivates people. And not only what they want to do, but always remember that one thing that's more important than the hope of getting something, surprisingly enough, is the fear of not getting it. Yeah? We are more concerned with the fear of not getting something than of getting something. That's something I only discovered about 5 years ago. Yeah? Am I going to miss it? So that's the ultimate advantage there. Don't know why this is the... I hope you can see this. It seems to be slightly off-centre, but I'm afraid this creative doesn't meet the brief. What brief? You sent a one-line text from a bar. That's why I called it a brief. Guessing what the client wants is part of the creative process. Why even bother sending the brief? So that we can blame you when you don't meet it. This happens all the time, yeah? You do get stuff that's been written on the back of an envelope. There's a guy I've been corresponding with him now for about 2 months. He came to see me in Bristol. I bought him lunch because I thought, mate, seemed a nice guy. And he wants me to do business with him. And I keep on saying to him, could you kindly explain to me, if it's not too much bloody trouble, in exactly what respect, step by step, what you're offering differs or is it better than what other people are offering? He seems incapable of, acceding to this rather simple request. Can you tell me, when people are interested in buying the stuff, what do they do and how do you handle it better? When they come to buy the stuff, how do you make it easier for them to buy? Yeah? Is the stuff you give them better than other people's stuff? How hard can that be? Too bloody hard for him, yeah? It's extraordinary. I've been at this game, as I was saying, for 50-odd years, and I still shake my head in disbelief. So the thing about the brief, going to talk about the brief. My partner in Australia, Malcolm, had this wonderful saying. He said, if the creative is no good, there are only 5 possible reasons. He said the first reason is the brief. And the second reason is the brief. And the third reason is the brief. And the fourth reason is the brief. And the fifth reason is the brief. If you ask for shit, you'll get shit. Yeah? And most briefs are lousy. They're lousy. A good brief will do half the work for you. And a bad brief will leave you meandering hopelessly in creative wonderland. When Brian, who's sitting down there, Brian Thomas was my managing director at Trinity, Harvey, Bird and Watson, we were about to sell the agency, and we were approached by 8 of the top advertising agencies. I think it was 8, it was either 8 or 12. And eventually we were down to 2, Ogilvy and Mather and Gray. And the 2 things that I think decided us were that one was that the international something or other for Gray was a wanker, who asked the most stupid question I've ever heard. He said, when we bought you, how do we know that you're still going to be interested and, you're going to put what a bloody toss, it was a 3-year deal. Of course, we ain't going to get the money if the money doesn't come in, so we thought, Brian and I went to the toilet and I said to Brian, these people are a bunch of tossers, let's piss off. I don't think we even went back to the dinner table. We did a deal with Ogilvy because I knew the creative director there who'd offered me a job once. And in fact, I met him at this big do after we'd sold the business. And I turned to him and I said, so what happened to the job? I'm still waiting for the reply. But he used to say, give me the freedom of a tight brief. Give me the freedom of a tight brief. And this is one of the great nuclear physicists of the 20th century, Feynman, who said, scientific creativity is imagination in a straitjacket. I'm very happy if you tell me all the things I can't do. Yeah? For Christ's sake, don't say, Drayton, go away and have a great idea. I haven't, I only maybe had one great idea in my life, and that was when I discovered sex, I thought, this is all right. And the rest, all my other ideas have been rubbish. So I want you to tell me exactly what is it you want. So let's imagine the brief that Michelangelo was given by one of the most unpleasant of the Renaissance popes in a very, very densely packed field of shits. Pope Julius II, how he might have, his head of advertising, Cardinal Ledos, might have briefed Michelangelo. So. Please paint the ceiling. That's the kind of thing that you get, We want something, we want something creative. as opposed to what? So that's even worse. I get this a lot, you know. I'll get a brief will say, we'd like you to write a mailing. We want a one-page letter, a 4-page road. We've actually done the layout for you, so you can just fill in the empty spaces, you know. And it's going to go out in a C4 envelope. And I sort of say, well, what happens if I sort of say to you, how about a postcard? What happens if I say to you, how about sending an advance email? What happens if I say to you, how about ringing the people up? What are you employing me for, you know? You're not giving me the chance to come up with... so that's restricting poor old Michelangelo's options somewhat. So you say, this ceiling, you know, it's going to fall in, nobody gives a shit what I put up there. Yeah? And I was saying Pope Julius was an extraordinarily unpleasant man, much more unpleasant than Alexander Borgia, who was the Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, who was Alexander. And he was getting really excited by this time. He said to Alidos, he said, look, Alidos, he said, something really unpleasant is going to happen to you if I come into that bloody chapel again and there's sod all on the ceiling. I can't see any sign of this painter anywhere, you know, nothing. You better get it sorted out. Otherwise, you'll go to the Castel Sant'Angelo and spend the rest of your life there with nothing to eat. So eventually, Cardinal Alidos comes up with a brief. Well, that's okay. Now you know what we want. Biblical scenes. Yeah. God, Adam, angels, cupids, devils and saints. The whole lot. Yeah? Can we have some of that, please? But I would suggest that possibly the brief that did the job was more like this. Please paint our ceiling for the greater glory of God and as an inspiration and lesson to his people. I want frescoes depicting the creation of the world, the fall, mankind's degradation by sin, the divine wrath of the deluge, and the presentation of Noah and his family. So what's the difference between that one and the last one? Emotion. Emotion, yeah. I have decided, rightly or wrongly, that the secret of success, unless you're doing it all your own, doing it all on your own, maybe not, but if you're involving other people, then the secret of success is called leadership, yeah? Which has been described as the forgotten factor in management. And what does leadership involve? It involves convincing people that they can do things they never thought they could do, and making them believe they're capable of more than they ever imagined, and persuading them to do it for you and not for someone else. I do a thing which at least one person here has attended, in fact, in the past. It's called Aedim in the autumn. And I, not last year, but the year before, I got a man called Rowan Gormley, who's in partnership with Richard Branson twice, to come along and talk about what it was like being in business with Richard Branson. And I persuaded him to come along and talk again, because since then he started a very, very successful business called Naked Wines, which had a fantastic take-off in no time at all. And his description of what it was like to do with Richard Branson is very, very interesting. I mean, it's absolutely bloody hilarious. Because after the first interview, he didn't even know whether he got the job or not. But the whole thing was simplified to such a degree that when he said to Richard Branson, shall I go away and write sort of, a proposal for how we should do this? And Branson said, no. He said, just go away and do it. And he hadn't even got the job then. And then when he said, what about money? He didn't know what he was being paid. His wife, he went back to see his wife. His wife said, did you get the job? He said, I'm not sure. Second interview, how much you being paid? I'm not sure. And then he said, what about some money? And Branson said, oh yes. He said, you'll need some of that. He said, you better look around for some money. And Ryan gets on the phone, because he was previously in the investment banking business. Rings someone up and gets all the money in 60 minutes. Yeah. But Branson obviously had this ability to get people to follow him, and to get them to do things. I mean, if somebody comes up and says, what would you like? What do you think you can do? I think we could go into financial services. Oh, that's a good idea. I was just like, yeah, why don't you go away and do it? Yeah. So if somebody said to you, would you like, go away and start a financial services company with no money? Yeah? You said, well, you're a lunatic. But this guy managed to sort of make you feel you can do it. Yeah? So it's the same with the creative thing. You have to convince people they can do it, and you will indeed only do so if there is a hell of a lot of emotion involved. When you're doing something and it's going to happen, and you get excited about it and you're thrilled about it and it's wonderful. It's a fantastic feeling. And it's nothing to do with facts and figures. It's all to do with emotion. So the most important thing with a brief is, does it make people believe that they can do what you want them to do, and do it better than they thought they could do it? Are they inspired? Are they inspired? So the brief should give you the facts, and it should inspire. And I'm going to look at the facts now. I mentioned my partner, and the story I told you about Liverpool Victoria was an example of the very, very important thing. It's called digging. Yeah? Digging. Got to dig. Look for stuff. Yeah? I mentioned the thing which is amusing me so much, the candles. Yeah. So I said to my client in Slovenia, I said, how are your candles better than anyone else's candles? He said, they're better made. And I said, well, he hasn't yet been able to explain to me how they're better made. I don't really understand. And he said, I said, well, so which me? He said, we've got one that was been in a grave in Slovenia. He said, since we set up in business 18 years ago. I said, you've got this bloody candle still going? He said, yeah. So I thought, wow, I found stuff. I'm digging for something, So I said, this is what you're going to do. The first thing you're going to do is send a postcard. Yeah? And the problem is that nobody really knows where Slovenia is. So we'll send a postcard to these people, and it'll be a really old-fashioned looking religious postcard. Yeah? Because it's not to the people who are going to buy the candles, it's to the people who sell the candles. Yeah? The people in the churches and so on. It's a very religious thing, and I say, and underneath it, something like an extraordinary story from a little village you never heard of. Yeah? And then on the other side, it just sort of says, I want to send you something, blah, 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 blah. I didn't say what it was. So just keep your eye open for it. Yeah? So I know that's going to, whatever response they're going to get is going to double response. But only because I asked him what makes them different. And then I was chattering away about something completely different, because if you're trying to do something, it must always be there in your mind. Stick it in your mind and you see what comes out. It's got to be there in your mind. You've got to fill your mind with it. So I've always got on my mind this bloody candles. Yeah? So I said to him, I think I've got a line for you. I said, are there any candles that look exactly the same as yours? And he said, yeah. He said, there's some candles, they're made in China. If they're the same as ours, they're just cheaper and not as good. So I said, so here's your envelope line, and it's show the two candles next to each other. I said, and it just says two candles. One is better for your business than the other. I thought, oh, go away. And then he says, China. And I was having dinner that night with my partner, who's Italian, and another Italian girl. And they said, and out just casually, somebody happened to say that the Italians don't like the Chinese. I'm not going to say anything nasty about the Chinese, but I'm going to make sure that everybody who gets that mailing knows that the Chinese made the other candle. Yeah? So it all comes from, you've got it in your mind all the time, and you're looking for things that, you know, are going to do the trick for you. You're digging. You're digging. Consciously and subconsciously, you're digging. Yeah. Yeah. And it may sound, and the reason that people don't do it is because people are lazy. Look, I'm lazy. We're all lazy. It's the nature of human beings. But I found that the less lazy I am, the easier it gets. So it's, I mean, to the point, you know, sometimes really literally somebody can come up and say, can you help us? And I can have an idea in half an hour, but only because I've done a lot of work in the past, yeah? These are the elements that go into a brief. These are the questions you have to ask yourself. There is nothing new about this. It is an old journalistic formula. It's the same. And one of the things I would like to say to you is that what I'm talking to you about today, I'm talking to you about copywriting. I'm talking to you about how you write better copy. And you're probably thinking, I'm talking about stuff that sells, yeah? Well, I would like to say to you that the overwhelming majority of stuff that you do, whether you think it's copywriting to sell stuff or not, really is. Yeah? It really is. So I've written speeches for the chairman of Imperial Foods. I've written books. I've written scripts. I've written every damn thing you can think of. I do not adopt a different approach for any of these things. Yeah? I'm always thinking of the same things. Number one, have I got a beginning which is going to grab people, which will give them, they think they're going to get some sort of benefit, yeah? And which will make them want to keep going and stay with me, yeah? The most difficult thing. I have a friend called Joe Sugarman, who's one of the world's most wealthy people in this business. He's made an awful lot of money. And I saw him speaking years and years ago in London. And all he said was, he said, look, the only purpose of each sentence is to make sure somebody reads the next sentence. Yeah? So when I'm thinking of, if I'm going to sell something, there's some stuff in the back which you can ignore or buy, whichever you like. And I send out these messages regularly, and somebody wrote to me about 3 or 4 years ago and said, can you tell us how you built your agency and this, that and the other? And I said, oh yeah. You know. And then I was so busy I never got round to it. And then eventually I went away allegedly on holiday, and I thought I'll write it. So I wrote it. But the most important thing to me was, what is it that's going to get people interested? Yeah. So that's why the title of something like how even a business idiot like me can make $1 million or $2 million. Because most of us think we're not too smart at business. I'm certainly not too smart at business, you know. But it's got an element of surprise in it, and it suggests a benefit, you know. And if it's a speech, if something like this, I'm always thinking, how do I begin? Yeah? What do I say at the beginning? And the same thing that when you're writing copy, if you're writing copy, the thing you've got to spend most time on within the copy is how do you begin? Yeah? Because if you don't get them to begin, forget the rest, yeah? So if I'm doing a talk, for instance, I normally have about 5 or 6 different things I'm thinking I might say at the beginning. And I never know what I'm going to say until I say it. But I know that I've got lots of options, yeah? I've got much more chance of hitting the bullseye. You will notice, by the way, that I make all this stuff up as I go along. Yeah. And I think we're almost, how much longer have we got? Right now? Tea. Thank you for sitting so patiently. Don't fall asleep. It's bloody hot.